Thanks everyone, and thanks for coming to Unfold. We're really happy to have you here. And since innovation can be a really heavy topic, I was thinking how could I lighten up the mood a little bit before we get to the heavy stuff. And I've come up with this slide. And I actually want to give you like one fun fact, and that's I want to explain to you what I think these three gentlemen have in common. But it's a long day already, so I want you to do a little bit of stretching. So please raise your hand if you know who Gene Roddenberry is. I expected that. If you know who Matt Groening is. Yeah, that's better. And now raise your hand if you know who Richard Walter is. So I really hope that Richard will enjoy the moment when he has an audience where he's more famous than these two guys. Now I want to explain. So Gene Roddenberry is actually the scriptwriter of Star Trek, and he and his team are famous for predicting some of the technologies that were introduced throughout the years when they were airing the show. So like smart glasses, tablets, and stuff like that, they've predicted it. Now, Matt Groening, he's the author of The Simpsons, and The Simpsons are now famous for predicting 20 things that really happened, ranging from Ebola outbreak to smartwatch to faulty voting machines, everything. And now Richard, he's obviously the founder of Mews, and we really hope that he has, and we have as his team, some predictions regarding what will happen in hospitality. So let's get into that. The more I talk about hospitality and the more I'm asked to talk about innovation in hospitality, it feels to me that everyone is expecting that I will come on a stage and I will talk about robots and cameras and AIs and machine learning and stuff like that. But to be fair, I'm coming from a software development background, so I have quite a different perspective on hospitality. And today I want to share one of my secret thoughts. And that's that I think that hospitality is still, and guest experience is still driven by those systems. Now, that can be quite a provocative thought, so I understand that I have to explain that. And I have some examples for you, but before I get to them, I realize that not everyone in the room might remember what DOS is. So I have a screenshot of that. And what should be alarming for you is the fact that all the fields that are on that screen, we are filling in them all the time, even now, no matter how modern the application is. We're still doing the same stuff. And just to put it into perspective, this is a screenshot from Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin. The guy is 8 years older than I am. He's 40 today. That means that that screen is at least 25 years old. That's how I feel about it. Before I get finally to those examples, I want to show you this kind of very simple model that explains how I think about hospitality and guest experience, because guest experience is the most important thing. That's what's bringing revenues to hotels, because guests are paying more and more for the quality of stay, and they are coming back if they enjoy the stay. So in its core, it's hospitality. And I don't mean the industry, but I mean the human factor. So if I want to be hospitable, I will simply greet someone in my home, I will shake his hand, I will offer him hot beverage, and I will invite him under my roof so that they are not freezing outside in the rain. I don't need any technology for that, I don't need pen and paper, I don't need accountants, I don't need anyone. I will be hospitable. But on top of that, hotels are businesses, right? So we are not getting away with just human values. We need to wrap it around with procedures. We need to wrap it around with hotel branding. We need to do a lot to build that industry. And where I see hospitality tech is a layer around this core, the layer that removes friction. And it removes friction for both the guests and it removes friction for you hoteliers because it's removing bureaucracy. That's the ultimate goal of technology in hospitality, removing friction. And what you see as the surface of this, that's what's important for the guest. That's how they perceive their guest experience. What I want to say is it doesn't really matter how cool your tech is if you don't innovate the core. Because when I think about those robots and those cameras and AI, if we're still doing the same stuff that we were doing 25 years ago, it doesn't really matter if my application is DOS application, Windows application, cloud application, mobile application. It's still the same guest experience that's surfacing from this. So finally, my examples. The first example is actually an example from the past. And it's example of night audit. So that's a procedure that was established purely because of the technology state in the past. Before any computers, we were doing accounting in the hotel and billing pen and paper, and it was kind of fine. But then we saw that we have computers and that we can employ them to simplify this for us. So we employed them, but computers were pretty stupid, to be fair. They had low amount of space on the disk drive, they had low amount of memory, they had low computational power. So what we had to do is that every night we had to archive the accounting past, and we had to free up some memory so that other things can happen in the future. Since then, it's 25 years, computers have done a long way. They are completely different today. But in a lot of hotels and other properties, night audit is still a thing. For some reason, we are still pretending that computers cannot do two things in parallel, and we're locking down the system, and if the guest comes to the reception at 2 a.m. to check out, we're like, sorry, night audit. And that's weird, right? Example number 2. This should have been a prediction, but while I was working on this talk, it became a reality. So yeah, let's talk about allotments. 2 years ago, our CEO has published an article on our blog explaining why we will not build a feature in the traditional allotment style to support allotments. And there were 2 key issues that we identified with allotments. The first one was that hotels have to overbook to protect themselves. And then what it becomes is that they have to decline some of the guests, and that's definitely not a great experience. If you book a hotel and someone says, sorry, you had a booking, but we had to cancel, that's nothing that you would want to experience, so the next time you will book a different hotel. And the second thing is, if you don't do this, you're risking that you will end up having empty rooms in the hotel, which is something that business doesn't want to have. If you think about airlines, if they have a plane that's grounded and it's not flying, that's the biggest disaster that they can imagine. But in hotels, we're risking it basically every day because of allotments. So from my perspective, which can be completely wrong, what's core of the allotments is that those are static, because back then, when allotments were invented, everything was static because we had no online connectivity. The systems were not connected, so we had to simplify a lot, and we've created paper contracts where we say, okay, so for next 10 years, this travel agent will deliver every 80% of my availability, which is kind of cool because we outsource the sales and marketing to them, basically. In exchange for that, we're giving that travel agent a discount because they are doing a lot and they need to make some kind of money. So let's give them a discount based on that volume. What if, so yeah, this is how your rate pricing screen looks like today, something like this. You have a rate, you have dates, you have room categories, you're setting up prices. But what if the screen would look like this? What if you wouldn't have a special private rate for that travel agent that's linked to the travel agent contract, but you would actually introduce some kind of volume-based pricing that would be public for everyone? Because I've seen this at a lot of receptions already. You have a paper that's printed and it looks like this, but somehow, for some weird reason, systems are not supporting this. So this is something that could become a reality, and this would be open. And to be fair, this is absolutely normal in different industries, because what it is, it's subscription pricing. So if you think about Spotify or Netflix, you're basically paying beforehand, and you're saying, okay, so I'll be using your services next month, so please give me some streaming capacity, and I'll be using it. And then you have those family plans where, okay, it's more expensive, but you're paying less and less for every additional user. And what's the opposite value that you're getting? You're getting more streaming capacity to your home for more people in your home. How does Uber fit in? Recently, they've launched something that's called Right Pass, and they're doing a little bit different thing that I think is matching hospitality a little bit more. So for their subscription, you have no guaranteed availability, but what you have guaranteed is better pricing. So you're immune to price surges. It doesn't really matter how heavy the traffic is, if it's raining or everything. You have all the time better prices than anyone else without that right pass. And I think that that's something that could be applicable in hospitality. You're basically separating the occupancy and the economy behind it, and you're playing around with it. But unfortunately, this model will get a little bit more complex. I'll try to not to get complex, because I've studied mathematics, so that could get tricky with me. But let me know if I don't make sense at all, that's fine as well. But if you think about these 2 points, there is something that's a little bit hidden in there. And that's the fact that these reservations, even through OTAs, or even if I book as a guest on site, will not happen with 100% probability. That's something that's kind of in there, but it's not visible. So what I've just demonstrated with volumes can actually happen with probabilities of those bookings as well. So if the bigger probability that I want to have, that I will actually stay in that room, the more I have to pay. It's actually bidding. I have to bid against someone. And what it will become is actually an inventory stock market where people will be bidding against each other. And what it will do, it will fix the economy. Because if you think about allotments, what's weird about them is that for travel agents, you have to drive the price down. And for individual people, you have to compensate for that to fix your average revenue. So you're driving the price up. But with this, you will always sell for market price. I've seen this actually in airlines already as well. If you want to bid, you can bid against an upgrade to business class, and either they will sell nothing, which is possible if no one bids, or they will always sell something, but for the market price, for the biggest price that's available. Example number 3 is a complete prediction. And it's based on this. So if I'm booking as a guest, I'm asked to do a pretty complex decision, because I'm looking at the screen, and I can say, okay, so these 2 rooms are probably different. The same size, same number of people, and the price is different, right? It's 60 euros versus 100 euros. And that's a decision that is kind of not great for me, because I'm like, okay, so I actually want to stay in a room that's settled for 60 euros, and then there's a big jump of 40 euros for me to get more comfortable. And to be fair, I will not be reading the long description, because no one does that. This is, again, designed in the era of DOS systems, because we had to simplify. And the simplification here are actually rates and room categories. So someone has modeled a room with a lot of complex space features and other things, and then someone simplified it into 2 words, either standard double and king studio, for instance, and then the guest is expected to understand what's the difference and upsell themselves. And upselling is pretty hard. So one thing is this, and that's Home Alone again, This was designed in the era where most of the bookings were coming through the telephone. So actually, on the other side, there was an actual salesperson selling you the room and explaining the differences between standard double and King Studio. You were sold that room on a phone. And right now, we haven't changed anything, and we're expecting people to sell it themselves online by reading a paragraph of text. And that's just something that's not working properly. So what if we would change that experience? And we can learn from, for instance, Ryanair, but we can do it nicely. We don't have to use dark patterns of the web. So what if I would have a whole bunch of rooms available, and I would be saying, okay, I want to stay somewhere. That's settled. I can have that for, let's say, 100 euros. And then I'm upselling myself by tiny little steps that are very tangible to me. Because if I'm reading King Double or King Studio, I have no idea. But if you ask me whether I want to have a quiet room, oh, yeah, definitely. I want to have a quiet room. I was waking up today at 6 because someone was running the alarm in the hotel. And if you ask me whether I want a bathtub or if I want to have a sea view because I want to have great memories and I want to come back, that's something that I really understand. And for me, it's like really simple to create my own room category and my own package. We don't need to be continuing in what was said by the technology. And it's not just about the qualities of the rooms and stuff like that, but it can be applied even to the age of the guest that's staying, so it solves children pricing. If it can be actually applied, and that's canceling rate basically, so the room, the basic price would be the same at all times. There will be no rates, but if I set up an event happening in a city in different dates, I'll say, okay, so this event behaves like that because I'm close to that event as a hotel. I want to drive my prices plus 70% to the standard because this event is happening in my city. And that's what you do, but you do it manually. The system doesn't know this. And that's something that I think will be changing. Throughout the day, I've actually seen a lot of talks that are taking some parts of these things already into account. And everyone was talking a lot about guest experience. So what I want to do is just to touch a little bit on guest experience and have a look how a guest experience looks like. So if I'm a guest, I'm kind of standing in front of this. I will arrive to the hotel, and the first thing that I do is that I will approach the reception and I will check in. Why do I do that? To be fair, as a guest, I'm doing that only to get this. I'm not getting any experience from standing in a queue. I'm not getting any experience for looking at someone punching numbers into computer. I just want this, because for me, the crucial step is to unlock my room. Why the hotel is asking me to check in? Because you want to make sure that you authenticate the person that's getting this, and you want to make sure that I'm really Jirka and I can go into that room. But from the guest perspective, if we use technology to simply go into the hotel and authenticate myself in a secure and reliable way that will let me into the room immediately, me as a guest, if I'm on a business trip and I will be checking in, I don't know, today at 11 p.m., yeah, I will gladly skip the reception and I will go straight into my room. I'll hold this for a bit because I still have it. And I'm staying in the hotel. I'm exploring the city a bit if I have time. I'm probably drinking, I'm eating, I'm sleeping, I'm having a rest, I'm having fun. But I have to report that somehow to the hotel because you want to charge me for that, right? So some things like sleeping are happening automatically. You know that I'm there and that's it. But if I drink something from the minibar or if I eat something in the restaurant or something like that, I might need to go through the hotel with a piece of paper and stick it to the receptionist to actually report it, unless I have wristbands at City Hub, right? So that's something that technology can help us with as well. And then there's checkout. I stayed a few days, I'm checking out, and how does that look like? I'm approaching the reception, someone will open the computer, will look at my balance, and if it's not zero, if I have to pay something, I will pay on spot, and then finally I will get rid of this, because that's what I need to do. But if you think about this experience, we could do a lot to skip all of that. If I still will be thinking about the fact that I'll need this, because logs are just a problematic thing in hospitality itself, I can automate a lot of the checkout, because me as a guest, I could simply open an application, I could split my bills, I could pay online. I can actually, the application itself might ask me if I had something from minibar, and I will actually not forget to report it to the hotel and then write them email, oh, sorry, I had a Coke and I forgot to tell you, so please send me an invoice for €1. So I can do all of that myself, and then I'll be leaving the hotel and I'll be just handing over the card. And we're building that, and we will be rolling this out this autumn to selected hotels to pilot this. And we call it, of course, online checkout, because that's what it is. And it's not fixing just the guest experience, but it will be fixing a lot of the bureaucracy in the hotels as well, because we can delegate some of the tasks to the guests. And if we improve company billing, if we do routing instructions and stuff like that, it will really improve the back office of the system, and it will streamline the operation at the reception. And the outcome will be this. If I will be leaving a hotel, it will be simply a handshake, and I will say, okay, thank you for the stay, goodbye. And that's how it should be. So if I want to ask you to remember one thing, if you go back to your jobs and are doing your daily stuff, please think about this. If you're doing something, some procedure, think about the fact whether it's improving guest experience or you're actually doing that just because of the fact that it's a procedure. And if it's a procedure, start thinking about the fact whether it's a procedure because it makes sense, or it's some kind of procedure that was designed around some kind of system that is no longer there, but all the systems that are coming from that time are mimicking this, because actually those old systems defined the hospitality industry, the procedures, and now we are tightly sticking to those procedures still and building it into new systems that wouldn't have to be designed that way. And the key takeaway is that we have to innovate together. So we, as a tech company, we understand your businesses, and we will be there. We will be supporting all of these things. Sometimes we will be a little bit pushy. We will be pushing the boundary and asking you to let your guests check out online or experiment with inventory as stock options. But it's key that we innovate the core of the industry as well, because otherwise we're just wasting the new technology on doing the old stuff, and we're just making the systems prettier and prettier. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
So, will Mews become the first PMS that moves away from classic 3 p.m. check-in, 12 p.m. checkout, and allow rooms to be sold multiple times with dynamic pricing and allotments? I love whoever wrote that. David. Who is David? I love David. But Jirka, you want to answer that?
Thanks, David. So actually, if you reach me at the coffee break, I will show you some slides that I've skipped. Because we have some kind of sketches and designs for things like that. Because the idea is that right now, if people are checking out in the morning and checking in the afternoon, the hotel room is empty during the day. And that's actually another problem of the industry. And if we get more accurate with this, if we will know that the person's flight is at 9 a.m., which means that they will be leaving at 7 a.m., and the arrival will become at, like, I don't know, 8 p.m., we can actually utilize that room throughout the day, and we can actually use it as, I don't know, co-working space or something different, and actually drive more revenue, because it's, again, the plane analogy. There's a plane in that room sitting on the ground and no one is using it, and there's just waste of money. So yes, something like that needs to happen as well.
There's another question. How do you manage the payment process for the online checkout experience?
Great question. So actually, our product managers are here today, and our product designers, and you can chat with them about this, because that's one of the most complex things that needs to happen there. So when we started thinking about online checkout, we said, okay, so that's like easy, show me the bill, I will pay for it, and that's it. But then we were thinking, okay, so what if the guest comes through a travel agent? They cannot see their bill. And if you start thinking like this, there are like 20 or maybe 30 different scenarios that are happening in hotels, and we need to fix them all one by one. So actually, we will start rolling this out to smaller groups of guests, where this is all streamlined already, and we'll be adding one scenario at the other. But as I said, let's chat with our product managers, because they are the ones that are working on this day and night, and they will be able to answer that question better than me.
And the last one is, how do you make sure that you sell attributes via OTA, which are room type based?
Good question. I guess it will be a little bit of lobbying and a little bit of convincing, because otherwise we would have to end up narrowing it down to room categories again, which is kind of not good. So either people will find this useful and it will drive more direct bookings, or we will have to renegotiate everything with OTAs, be like, okay, this is the old way, now let's talk about the new way.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.